I never imagined that what started as a hike among friends would end with only 2 bodies being recovered by the search team and 5 names erased from the list of the living. It's strange to begin a story at the end, but perhaps this way you'll understand that there's no turning back, and that certain choices, even small ones, seal entire destinies. My name is Isaac. I'm 34, and to this day, when I close my eyes, I can still smell warm flesh lingering in the cold mountain air. Argento National Park, on the border between Austria and Slovakia, is a place ordinary tourists avoid. Little cell signal, steep trails, and a constant feeling that you're being watched. But for us, Clara, Nishiro, Eloy, Luna, Vlad, and me, that was exactly what drew us in. The promise of absolute silence, untouched nature, and wild camping, far from any civilization. Luna, who worked with antique book restoration, found a mention of the Argento Trail in an 1890 diary, written by an explorer who disappeared shortly after describing the mountains where echoes don't return. We thought it was just tragic 19th century romanticism. We set out on a cloudy morning with light backpacks, tents, and supplies for 3 days. Vlad, a dam engineer, brought a drone. Clara, always skeptical and practical, took charge of the GPS. Nishiro, an ex-military man, handled security, and me, I was just the trip's narrator, the guy for photos, videos, for the channel. It was supposed to be new content. It was supposed to get views. God, how I regret it. On the first day, everything went as planned. We followed the map Luna had printed, skirted a frozen stream, and crossed a narrow valley that seemed straight out of a Renaissance painting. Gray sky, snow-covered rocks, twisted trees as if trying to flee the ground. We set up camp next to a circle of ancient stones that Vlad swore were shaped like a compass. During the night, Nishiro heard footsteps outside the tent, but saw no one. He laughed to himself and said it must have been a fox, but there were no tracks the next morning. On the second day, the trail simply vanished. Even with the GPS working, the path Luna described stopped making sense. We were on a steep slope where the map indicated a plain. Trees that were once sparse now formed a dense, suffocating forest that seemed to close in behind us. Vlad tried to send the drone up, but it lost signal less than 50 meters high. When it returned, it brought back disturbing images. Among the treetops, a geometric pattern formed, almost like eyes opening. We laughed, nervously, but Luna didn't laugh. She turned pale. She mumbled something in Slovenian that no one understood. From then on, she barely spoke. On the third night, the forest started making noises. Noises none of us recognized. Dry snaps like breaking fingers, whispers even without wind, and something that mimicked our voices. When Clara went to the stream for water, she swore she heard my voice calling her, but I was on the other side of the camp. And then came the first loss. Eloy disappeared without a sound. He was less than 4 meters from the campfire, setting up the tripod for a long exposure photo of the moon between the trees. And then, he wasn't there anymore. We called, we screamed, we ran. Nothing. No sound. No trace. Nothing. Clara started to cry. Luna said it was too late, and that now, the ancient rhythm had begun. That's what she called it. The ancient rhythm. I slept poorly, with my machete close to my chest and the radio to my ear. At 3:17 a.m., I heard a strange noise in the bushes, almost a moan. When I shined my flashlight, I saw, for less than 2 seconds, what looked like Eloy, naked, with empty eyes and greenish skin. But the most wrong thing was his mouth. It was sewn shut with copper wire. I screamed, and he, or it, vanished like a shadow in the mist. The next morning, Nishiro decided we should try to go back. But no matter where we walked, everything seemed to repeat itself. The same stones, the same broken root, the same tree with spiral branches, as if we were walking inside a mirrored image, or trapped inside a geographical nightmare that rearranged itself in front of us. By dusk, we found Clara hanging by one leg in absolute silence. Her face was swollen, but with no signs of struggle. Luna, in shock, whispered, "They are collecting echoes." And that's when we started hearing the chants. They came from all directions, deep, ancient, in a language none of us knew. Vlad started screaming. He ran off alone down the trail. Nishiro, and I tried to catch him, but it was too late. We found him hours later, kneeling in the snow, his chest ripped open, and something planted inside. I can't describe it. Not with human words. After finding Vlad kneeling, destroyed, buried up to his shoulders in the snow with that thing growing in his chest, Nishiro fell silent. He took out his survival knife and began carving symbols I'd never seen into a tree. Circular things, spiral lines ending in eyes or teeth. When I asked him what they were, he just replied, "Maybe they'll respect this. Maybe." But deep down, even he seemed to know there was no way out now. Time didn't obey. The light in the sky was no longer solar. It was something artificial, cold, and eternal. We walked for hours, and that's when Luna suddenly stopped. She pointed upwards and with a hoarse voice whispered, "They are reading us." When I looked, I realized the treetops aligned in concentric circles. It was as if we were being observed from above, but not by birds, by something that absorbed our thoughts, our memories, and used them against us. I started hearing laughter. From my childhood, my sister singing in an old car, my grandmother calling my name, voices that couldn't possibly be there. Clara, dead, called to me. Eloy, dead, apologized to me. Vlad was crying. From then on, we lost Luna. She walked away, in silence, and when Nishiro ran after her, he screamed and came back with his face covered in blood. He pushed me against a tree and said, "You don't want to see what she became." He didn't explain. There was nothing left to explain. He just wiped his knife, and we kept going. The air was thicker, gray. It was like breathing inside a decades-abandoned hospital. We passed through a clearing where the ground was covered in human skins laid out like rugs. Their edges still pulsed, as if the skins were still breathing. I vomited. Nishiro remained calm, but I noticed he was trembling. We sat on a rock, each in our own silence, waiting for something, anything, until we heard a bell. A huge, deep bell, like those from churches submerged in time. But there was no church. There was no sound of wind, just the bell, and then the forest opened. In front of us, a tower made of bones rose, thin and tall, touching the low clouds. There was no way that could have been there before. It was impossible. And from the top, a staircase made of human ribs spiraled down to a black door, carved with scenes of sacrifice. Human figures being decapitated and offered to creatures whose forms defied symmetry. Nishiro said it was the House of Reflection, the name Luna had whispered before she disappeared. I wanted to turn back, but the sound pulled us in. And when we entered, we understood that the forest wasn't the end. It was just the frame. Inside, each room was a distorted mirror of our own memory. I saw my childhood recreated with walls made of flesh and my childhood toys hanging on hooks. Nishiro saw the dark corridors where he fought, but with the voices of dead relatives asking him to let it in. It was a living construct, made to dismantle us from within. The mirrors trembled. Each reflection showed versions of ourselves, eyeless, with sewn mouths, with open bodies. And in every corner, the sound of someone crying. A continuous cry, and then laughter. The ceiling opened, and a creature descended. I can't explain it. It was as if the absence of God had taken form, with tentacles that trembled with hunger and an eye in the center of its head that watched us without blinking. Nishiro screamed and ran with his knife, tried to attack, but the creature touched him with a finger and he simply stopped, turned to dust, without pain, without a scream, without a struggle. I knelt there, waiting for my turn. But it didn't come. The creature retreated and vanished into a crevice. The tower trembled. The sound of the bell rang once more, and then everything collapsed. When I woke up, I was alone in a clearing. Clara, Vlad, Luna, Eloy, and Nishiro were gone. But their voices, they were all around me, singing, praying, calling my name. And now, every night, I hear the bell's chimes in my dreams. It's coming. The forest didn't finish me, It left me alive for some reason, perhaps to tell this. If you're still here, then you're part of this now. I have to ask you something important. If this story touched you, if it gave you chills, if it made you look around as if something was watching you, then interact. But not with a simple like or love. Write in the comments one thing. What was the strangest night of your life? And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, listen to me. Subscribe now. Not for me, but because maybe one day you'll need this story as a guide, as a warning, as a final sign. How many days has it been? I don't know anymore. When I open my eyes, I see the same gray sky above me, the same burnt trees around, and the same feeling that something just moved away. I haven't eaten in ages. I haven't truly slept, but I'm alive, or something close to it. And the strangest thing, my body is changing. Slowly. The tips of my fingers are turning opaque, like old wood. Sometimes small splinters detach and fall, as if I'm being replaced by something that has always been here. I went back to the tower, or what was left of it. Only the base remained, a circle made of gigantic vertebrae. When I knelt in the center, the earth below gave way. I fell into a hole, a long, suffocating descent. And down there, it was different. A corridor made of flesh. The walls pulsed, and veins writhed around me. The lights came from within, from organs hanging like living lamps. And the sound, it wasn't the bell. It wasn't screams. It was music. Something between Gregorian chant and nightmare whispers, as if dead voices were trying to sing a lullaby to a god that should never awaken. With each step, my feet sank into a soft, warm, almost living ground. And on the walls, I saw eyes. Hundreds. Each one blinked as I passed. I saw versions of myself between the seams of the flesh, some laughing, others dragging themselves. One of them looked directly at me and said, "You are not the one writing this story," and disappeared with a dry snap. Deep inside, I found a door. It breathed, literally. Every time I approached, it swelled and exhaled a smell of iron and dead roses. When I touched it, I felt that something inside recognized me, and it opened. Behind the door was an underground chapel, but made of twisted bones, overturned benches, burnt crosses. An altar pulsed in the center, and upon it lay Luna, but not as before. Her body was dry, yet it floated above the altar, with roots coming out of her back, embedded in the ceiling. Her eyes were open. She saw me, and she smiled. "You came back too late," she said, "but there's still time to become part." I tried to run, but my feet wouldn't obey. Luna dissolved like smoke, and the altar split, revealing a hole. Not dark, but made of superimposed images. I saw my house, my room, my mother crying, my name written in an obituary. And then, I saw myself here, at this very moment, writing this account, but with a different face. This reality is crumbling. It's not just terror. It's as if time itself is trying to rewrite what happened, or hide it. The forest isn't an entity. It's a process, something that absorbs, corrects, copies, and then returns to the world with a subtle difference. And I got caught in it. We all did. I climbed back up a corridor that hadn't existed before, and up there, I was back in the clearing. But something had changed. The sky was clear, blue, the sun was shining, and the city appeared in the distance. The same one we left weeks ago. Houses aligned, roads, people, smiles, everything. Normal. So perfectly normal it felt wrong. I ran, reached the edge of the forest. I saw myself reflected in car windows. It was me, but it wasn't. My eyes were deeper, my skin grayer. And when I entered the city, no one recognized me. I walked into my house, and I was there. Another me, living my life. My dog ignored me. My mother looked at me as if I were a stranger. I spoke to her. I screamed. I begged for help. She just closed the door. And then from the window, I saw Nishiro, alive, sitting at a cafe, but not as before. Short hair, formal clothes, smiling, talking to someone, as if nothing had happened. I went back to the forest. There was no other alternative. Now I understand. That wasn't just a forest. It was a filter of identity, of purpose. You enter as one person, you leave as another. Or worse, you don't even leave. You just think you left. And you continue living, believing you are yourself. While the true you is still there, in the corridors, in the roots, inside the tower made of bones. And now something is approaching again. And you? Yes, you who have come this far. I need you to tell me, what if you were in this forest? What would you see inside? What would your copy be? Tell me. Don't hold back. Go to the comments and leave it there, truly. Leave it as if it were a confession. I read them all. And of course, if you still haven't subscribed, listen to me. We're creating a library of forgotten horrors here, a community of vigilant eyes watching what lurks in the cracks of the world. Subscribe and activate the bell. Maybe one day you'll need to come back here. After I returned to the forest, I started noticing that it wasn't quite a forest anymore. The trees weren't exactly where they had been. The sounds were more rhythmic, as if someone was chanting a song I couldn't understand. And most of all, the shadows. They were moving on their own. The first time I saw it was near what remained of the lake. The water was still, like a mirror of pitch black, and the surrounding trees reflected strangely. I was looking at myself there when I noticed my shadow was delayed. Yes. I moved my arm, and it lagged by half a second, like a video with lag. And then, it started moving before me. I tried to escape, but the trees closed in. Literally. The sound of cracking branches and twisting leaves filled everything around me. Every path turned into another, as if the forest was reorganizing itself on purpose, or for a purpose. I found a shelter, or what seemed like a shelter, a cabin made of dark stone, with inscriptions in languages that gave me a headache just looking at them. Inside, a woman, very thin, grayish skin, completely white eyes. She spoke in a low voice like a poorly tuned radio, repeating a name, Meheli, Meheli, Meheli. I asked what it meant. She said, the root of everything, the oldest shadow, the inverted mirror of creation. Then she smiled and said, you have already met him, but you don't know. I shouldn't have asked more, but I did. What does he want? He wants to be you. The cabin floor trembled. The woman dissolved into dry leaves. She didn't die. She dissolved, as if she had never been there. Then I knew. What the forest does isn't just copying. It recreates, but not to kill, not to scare. It replaces. Slowly, it takes your form, your voice, your story, and one day you look in the mirror and no longer recognize what's there. And the worst part, no one else recognizes you either. I found records later. In a hollow tree, there was a notebook with dates, names, cities, patterns. People who disappeared for days, returned, and then did horrible things. A man from Germany, who came back from a retreat and strangled his wife with a sheet while singing in an unknown language. A woman from Namibia who left her family, dug a hole in her backyard, and started feeding what was there with pieces of meat bought from a butcher. A boy from northern Russia who disappeared in a frozen forest and was found alive, smiling in a place where no one survives. And all of them had experienced something similar to this forest. Am I one of them now? Or am I the replacement? The question hammers in my head every time I see him. Yes, him, the copy. Now he appears every night, sometimes at the edge of the clearing, sometimes sitting on the other side of the campfire, always with the same face, the same smell, but with a subtle difference. He never blinks. And yesterday, he spoke. It's not your time yet. I replied with anger, with hate, with fear. Time for what? And he just smiled. I lay down that night certain I wouldn't sleep, but I did. And the dream? It wasn't a dream. It was a displacement. I was in the same place, only empty, soundless, treeless. Just the towers, hundreds of them, rising from the ground like ribs. And all the towers vibrated in harmony, like bells. But instead of an echo, memories came out of them. I saw Nishiro, frozen in a moment. Luna, opening her eyes on the altar. The woman from the cabin, before she dissolved. And me. 1,000 versions of me, all living variations of the same tragedy. In one, I killed my friends. In another, I was the first to jump from the tower. In another, I was swallowed by a breathing tree. But in all of them, it ended the same. I was forgotten. I woke up gasping. The forest was in absolute silence, a thick silence, as if reality itself was holding its breath. And then, I saw the last tower, one no one had mentioned, not on maps, not in accounts, not in delusions. It was there, waiting, with lights on, doors open. I went in. In the next block, I'll tell you what I found inside. The tower was silent. No sound, except for my own footsteps, and sometimes their echo coming from different directions, as if there were other steps besides mine. It rose impossibly upwards. The interior was made of a material that looked like stone, but vibrated, with heat, pulsed like living flesh. There were mirrors everywhere, but each one showed a different version of me. One older, one covered in moss, one without eyes, one with a scar I never had. None of them moved as I did. All of them waited. In the center of the room, a spiral of black ropes climbed to the ceiling, an invitation or a sentence. I didn't think much. I climbed. Every meter I climbed, the world seemed to bend more. My memories began to repeat in reverse order. My name no longer made sense. The pain in my chest became so strong I thought I was having a heart attack. But I continued. Up there, on the last platform, there was no room. There was an open space leading to nothing. But even this nothing was alive. It seemed to observe, and at the same time, welcome. I sat on the floor. I was exhausted. That's when he appeared again. But this time, he didn't have my face. He had everyone's. With each blink of my eyes, his face changed. It was Nishiro, Luna, the woman from the cabin, my father, a police officer I knew in the past, a child who didn't exist, all of them, one by one, until he became formless, like a void that still breathed. He spoke with all voices at once. You are not chosen. You are accessible. That's why you enter. That's why you return. That's why you fail. I asked, unsure if I was using my mouth or my thoughts. What is this place? A prison? And he replied, it's the rehearsal for the end. And then he showed me. The towers by the thousands weren't just here. They were multiplying, all over the world, growing slowly, always at the edge of sight, in forgotten places. In the forests of Japan, in the deserts of Patagonia, beneath lakes in Canada, in ghost towns in Ukraine, in the holes of the Sahara. A silent web made to capture not bodies, but stories. The world is being told by something. And when that something finishes telling what was narrated disappears, you have one more choice, he said, and 3 doors opened before me. In the first, there was the world as I knew it. But something deep down told me that if I entered there, I wouldn't be myself anymore. I would be him, or what replaced me. In the second, the forest again, but in flames, screaming. In the third, there was me, sitting, writing this. I chose the third, and now you are here, reading, or listening. Part of me is in you, and perhaps something of you is being watched too. This was the end of my story, or rather, the point where it hides itself within yours. If you've made it this far, it's because something in you recognizes this shadow. So subscribe to the channel now. not as an obligation, but as a pact. We're creating a space together where stories don't die, where the strange is welcome, and fear is just the beginning. Now tell me, what part of this story moved you the most? Have you ever felt like you were being watched by a version of yourself? Share in the comments, not because it helps the algorithm, but because you might be the next to leave a warning for those who come after. And if you have a story, yours, someone close to you, a rumor from your city, tell us. This community is made by those who live on the threshold between the normal world and the other side of the mirror.